looks slightly different, but ultimately you can expect to see something like that. What is the true behind the meter cost of utility electricity? So that's broken down into 3 sections. The top section, and this is a common question we would ask, is the fixed and daily admin fees. So you're not going to be able to change those, escape those. That is the cost of doing business and being tied to the grid. The second portion is the variable transmission and distribution, and that is going to vary between 5.5 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's going to be based on how many kilowatt hours you draw from the grid. And then you have your energy charge at the bottom, so that's somewhere right now between 6 and 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So the total cost over on the right for all of that is 11.5 to 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's what we have to compete against. Solar Pros. Jeff, back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Val.
You're welcome.
So we've started to see, obviously, the install base and the people out there who have had their solar systems for a while are really starting to try to find ways to optimize and get the most value out of their system. And so we've started to call them solar pros or such. So because there's quite a few people in the room here who have solar already, and lots of people I think who are well down the path of understanding it, we thought we'd try to talk a little bit about the idea of how you can actually optimize your system. So it's a little bit hard to see here. Actually, let's start with the yellow. So the yellow curve here would represent a typical production curve over the course of the day. So the beginning and the end of the day, not too much happening. The middle of the day, right around lunch, that's your highest production time for solar, and that's when you're going to produce your most power on your system on your roof. In the lighter blue here, we've come up with a hypothetical load profile. So what your home is actually using at each point in the time of day. So what does that might mean? It could mean anything from having your lights on, it could mean running your oven, all of your electricity, AC, etc. And you can see the profile in this example. It's high at the beginning of the day when we're all getting ready and about to head out the door. And then it's high again when we all come home at dinner. And in the middle of the day while we're all out at school or out doing our things and such, probably we hopefully have turned everything off as we headed out the door and you're going to see that profile die. Well, what actually happens here is you're producing that electricity, and because the yellow curve is so much higher than what you're actually using at that time of day, that's excess generation. And that's going to go back to the grid. So you're going to get paid for that. Now, in Valerie was describing what a typical total charge is. Do I know how to go up on this?
Yeah, how do you go back?
Page up? Page up again?
There
Right.
it is.
So when you ship back to the grid, the utilities, they're kind of nice, but they're not that nice. They only are going to give you that bottom piece there, the 6 to 8 cents. They're not going to give you anything on that variable T&D, the 5.5 to the 10 cent number there. So what that means is if you can grab that kilowatt hour off your roof and you can use it, you avoid both of those pieces, the 11.5 to 16 cents. But if you're shipping it back at the middle of the day, you only get the bottom, the 6 to 8 cent charge, okay? So shifting back to the curve here, well, how do we actually change that? Well, there's a couple ways we can do it, and it's I'll talk about both of them. The first one might be to think about how you can shift your loads to the middle of the day. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done, I get it. But that is what we actually see people starting to do. And we get calls from people, you know, or we'll see them on the street or whatever, and they'll be like, I've been shifting my loads to the middle of the day. I run my laundry in the middle of the day. I do this, I do that. I'm running my dryer, whatever. Maybe they don't even run a dryer if they're really trying to optimize. But we really see this type of behavior. We see people putting solar in, becoming aware of what they're actually doing with their electricity, and they're actually changing their behaviors. And in fact, we sometimes even would, well, we don't see this, but we hear people saying they're dropping their total usage of electricity because the solar is helping them become more aware of it. Pretty cool. So then the next thing maybe you could look at doing might be to add a battery. So why might you add a battery? Well, theoretically, you could grab that excess production in the middle of the day, and this whole yellow line is dropped. We probably should maybe have it showing a bit higher here. And we could choose to arbitrage those kilowatt hours, grab them, stick them in the battery, and choose when we want to use them versus actually purchasing them back, or rather shipping them back to the grid for a lower price. So now we have the opportunity by using our battery, plus shifting our loads, to try to take the advantage of every single kilowatt hour that that solar system has produced and use it to avoid the brown energy coming from the utility and the variable T&D charge that's going to get put on you for shipping those electrons all the way from the coal plant, nat gas plant, whatever it is, all the way to your home. Okay? Now, I do want to comment here, and that is, and make it, I guess, fairly clear, that currently the economics don't work for battery storage in Alberta. Okay? And we don't have time of use, and frankly, the prices of electricity are too low. To put it in context, these are California numbers. In California, you might see 16 cents a kilowatt hour in the middle of the day, but they have time of use. You might see 43 at dinner time, okay? 16 cents, still, I'd take that all day to compete against for solar, frankly, right? That's a big number, we can kill it, that's great. But that actually, they consider that to be very inexpensive electricity and not worth it. The utilities have actually dropped the price because there was so much solar production happening, and they were trying to sort of level things out as such. So now, perhaps in that case, a battery makes sense. Hey, I'm gonna grab something, I could have made only 16 cents with it, I'm gonna make 43, away I go, okay? That's where you're seeing a ton of storage get done. Not here yet, could happen. Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about battery storage and EV charging, and I'm gonna try and keep going a little more quickly here. So right now, residential battery storage is easily done. It's pretty easy if you have a solar system right now to add Tesla Powerwall, Sonnen, which is owned by Shell now, to try and give you an idea of what's happening out there. Shell's buying battery companies, Renewable are coming, heads up, LG, and many others, right? We're also starting to see the inverter companies. So Enphase, if you happen to have an older system, you may have an Enphase inverters. They have a battery solution. SolarEdge is used quite often. They are looking at a battery solution, Fronius, et cetera, right? So lots of the different players are getting in and coming up with their own battery solutions. I mentioned already, economics can work, but not in Alberta. And right now, if you're buying a battery in Alberta, you're buying it for resiliency. You're buying it for power outages, or maybe off-grid, but not even if you have access to the grid, right? You're probably not going to do that. The other one I would talk about actually is battery capacity. So a Tesla Powerwall, so there's two Powerwalls on that wall. They do about 13.5 kilowatt hours each for storage. An average home uses about 27. So you really would need at least two of them to be able to get storage for the course of the day, which can come up in price.
To back up your home.
To be able to cover and run a whole day on a battery, thank you, yes. Yeah. The other, so sort of continuing on the battery challenges, if you will, battery systems are actually quite complicated. And to put this in context, we were all laughing. We are an engineering firm as well, so we do design as well. And we built a 600 plus kilowatt system, designed and built it. And we built a full system with batteries and everything else in it. And when we actually looked and compared the designs, there was more complexity in the residential system with batteries than there was actually in the, we thought, in this larger, big rooftop system. So there's a lot going on there. The other thing is it turns out quite often the electrical system in the home has capacity issues. And I mentioned 2 batteries might be required already to do at home, and it's still fairly expensive. You might be looking at about $17,000 for a single battery. That's fully installed. The final one is there may be certain loads in your home that are just too big, too sudden, to be able to be handled by the inverters that are in the battery systems. Okay, EV and solar. So this is a beautiful solution, I think. Net zero driving, here we come. So yeah, I Googled today because I don't have my Tesla yet. And it looks like they use about 205 watt hours per kilometer driven. And that would convert to about 4,100 kilowatt hours over the course of a year, 20K, if you're driving 20,000 kilometers. That's actually not a lot of electricity. So Val showed us that a 7.5 kilowatt is sort of what we're seeing for our average residential install size now. And 4 kilowatts is, it's not that much more, right?
That's about half of what an average house consumes
annually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we're sort of starting to see, or what we're thinking is, we think if you purchased an EV, you might be wanting to try to add to that solar system you already have on it. Things to consider when installing solar. So do you think you'll purchase an EV in the future? If you do, consider capacity in your system. I mentioned that. Should you install or at least rough in for a future charger? Should you plan your solar system size to accommodate EV additional electricity? So this is a bit of a trick one. You may want to do that, but if you don't have your EV yet and you plan for a system that produces more electricity than you can use in a year, Valerie was explaining the microgeneration agreement, they won't let you do that. So what can you do? Well, you could put in an inverter that's large enough to be able to handle future system size. You can plan your roof and get the layout set up, only put in a portion of it and plan to do that at a future date. So you can take steps to do it, you just can't do it ahead of time. Do you think you're going to add a battery? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it for resiliency, or are you doing it for some hopeful economic benefit in the future? Once again, electrical equipment capacity is going to potentially be an issue. Do you want full home backup, or do you just want to pick a few critical loads? And which system actually best meets your goal? I was talking about a lot of the inverter manufacturers getting involved. And then this one is, we've seen this a couple times now, and it's quite interesting. Is privacy a concern? So when we started installing Tesla Powerwalls, they would actually add something in the agreement that would basically give them first right or a right to try to draw out kilowatts or do different things as far as different type of purchase agreements and such. And some people did not want that. Probably the same issue with your EV, if you think about it, if you're a Tesla guy or gal. But basically just something to think about, something that customers who are really thinking about stuff would bring up, and I'd be like, yeah, that's a great thing. So I'm going to throw it out there for you guys too. Last slide, I hope. Full home electrification. It's hard to do after the fact, just because I did it. So new construction for net zero, 100% electrical homes is pretty doable and affordable. The picture here, we mentioned there's 5 Managh net zero homes. They're fully electrified. Frankly, there's nothing too sexy happening there, right? There's an air source heat pump, there's an electric furnace, they've got a great building envelope. They can't control how much electricity the homeowners choose to use, so that can still blow a net zero home out of the water, but assuming they're actually treating it effectively, then they're good to go. Electrifying your existing home can be quite a challenge. And if you take a look at the pie chart up in the top right, which is pretty hard to see, I think now, the blue pieces, the 2 blue pieces of the pie, that's electricity, right? So all the stuff we're talking about today is going after that. Hot water is 25%, nat gas or geothermal. And similarly, space heating is 60+%. And right now, that's what we're all doing in our homes, the majority of us. And we're gonna learn a bunch about geothermal here, I think, in a minute. And the challenge right now is that electricity is about 12 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's actually a heck of a lot more expensive than nat gas. So if we take a gigajoule of nat gas, which is 278 kilowatt hours, and actually do the math, it actually drops it down to about 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So you got this big giant portion of your home that you're heating with really inexpensive dollars per kilowatt that you're thinking about converting to electrification. So if you can't do creative things, like air source heat pumps, geothermal, and that, it's hard. And if you didn't have the chance to get your building envelope right the first time, pretty hard to fix that afterwards too. Very final comment on electrification is your home's electrical service size and current CEC, Canadian Electric Code requirements can actually limit how much you can electrify. They might say, yeah, no, you're not putting all those loads on that service. It's X grand, it's a lot to up the service size. That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions for KCP before they sit back down?
Peace out.
Yeah.
What's the physical life of the solar panels that you use?
So we use a lot of different manufacturers, but we use a tier 1 is always what we would use, and that's like it actually has a definition and such, but the warranty, it'll be 15-ish years for actually the manufacturer defect, but then it'll have a performance warranty guaranteeing performance in year 25 will be usually, 80% of nameplate value. And that's really the only way you can actually do all of these financial projections we're talking about, right? Or even anybody is doing it with solar. There has to be a guarantee or confidence that module will continue to produce into the future in order to actually see the financials that we're seeing on them. And so that's why the manufacturers have chosen to do that. Tier one would base, you know, when you're thinking, what's a tier one? That means that's a company that's got X billion-dollar market cap and are gonna be here tomorrow, they're gonna be here in 20 years and so
25
forth.
years.
25 years.
Yeah.
Are you anticipating a major rise in electricity costs with the county government having removed the cap?
No, I think we'll see the, I don't, so I'm not an expert in this, right? But if I talk to the guys who are actually doing this and forecasting it and such, they don't think there'll be a massive move. There's some, we're already seeing it. Like I know Lee and Val mentioned to me that they're seeing some upward movement on the, when you don't have a, when you're just on a floating rate. But, you know, not massive, not super substantial.
No, I
I
think
don't think so.
I think the highest I've seen is about 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Haven't seen anything much higher than that.
Terry?
Another question about panels. How, kind of 2 points in this question. How much more efficient are they today than they were like 3 or 4 years ago? And then moving forward, do you see technology taking that efficiency? Is there anything on the horizon that's making them way more efficient in the near future? Or?
I see no step change technology coming down the pipe. So that's the second part of your question. Small incremental improvements will continue to change. So we recently just changed panel sizes on a commercial project and, you know, bumped it up by 5 watts because from the time the project started or was signed off, you know, X months ago to now, there has been a small incremental change. You know, are we using 315s now on resin?
Yeah, I think when I started, we were mostly quoting 305s-ish. The largest panel size we see is 400, but
Yeah,
that's
but that's a
not,
commercial,
that's a
so that's a
commercial,
different
that's not
size.
a residential application. Financially, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, 315s are right now your best bang for your buck. Yeah, and
There'll be small incremental changes
Yeah,
each
they-
year, but
yeah.
I don't see a step change.
yeah, nothing huge.
So,
You could solve the battery problem, like say you did have an EV, and is there any conceivable logic to just taking yourself right off the grid?
if you could solve the battery
Yeah,
problem,
like if you are comfortable with your own battery bank, or if you had, a Tesla or whatever, is there any?
so I think it would be a wonderful thing to be able to have distributed generation at your home or building or otherwise, be able to manage it and be able to step away from the utility side, right? Because the utility, first of all, they're producing 100 miles away, or maybe not, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers away. You have all that transmission loss in the lines, and then you don't have the ability or the power to actually make decisions necessarily. It's somewhat dictated to you. You don't really have a lot of choice. So I think that would be a great place to get to. I don't believe we're anywhere near that at this point, but I do believe that people are going to start making decisions to go the distributed generation route as an alternate versus continually focusing on centralized generation.
We can take one more question, and then we'll, just for the sake of the evening, we'll keep moving, and then we can come back to questions at the end. Okay?
Yeah, have you done any work with installing solar roofing tiles versus the PVs?
No.
No.
So we, because of our relationship with Tesla, we thought we would have access to their solar roof. Their solar roof became vaporware, or maybe it always was vaporware. I don't know if that term means something to you or not. That's a technology term, right? That means before something's actually a real thing, it's vaporware. So they, you know, it sounds like Musk has gone back and redone it, and you know we'll be watching. But it still sounds like the capital cost on it is substantial enough that it's just going to hurt the math and not going to make sense economically, at least for a period of time, unless it might make sense, we're hearing, in the a new build. But once again, when we're hearing stuff like that right now, you always hear it in the States first, and you heard some of those electricity costs that they're dealing with versus us.
Thanks. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jeff and Valerie. So now I'd like to welcome up I'm going to say your name wrong, I'm really sorry, Managh, to the stage. He's going to correct me when he comes up here now. John from Hellbent Geothermal.
Hi everyone, I feel a little lopsided here tonight with being the only geothermal guy and everybody else in the solar. But I'm not too worried because we're not in competition, and geothermal is actually a conservation technology, and so we will reduce the kilowatt hours that you use and cut down on the solar requirements. But anyway, we'll move on to GeoExchange. Sorry about that, just sensitive. Okay, a little bit of background. Hellbent was started in Golden in 2007, and my wife and I are partners in it. Our kids have been part of the operation when they're not off in school or having babies or traveling the world. So it's a family business, and we've been kept pretty busy. And most of our work is in the Columbia Valley and over here in the Bow Valley. But we do cover all of BC and Alberta. We've installed and serviced a variety of geothermal exchange systems, from small residential single-room units all the way through to the large 90-ton units down at Spring Creek. Hellbent has seen a number of technology changes and the industry grow since its birth, but let's just first discuss the term geothermal. It's actually quite confusing because it's unfortunately used in North America to cover all kinds of geothermal, and people can get mixed up with it. So geothermal power, geothermal energy is actually hot steam that is derived from underground and piped directly to the surface to turbines to generate electricity. Whereas what we do in Canmore GeoExchange is actually a lower grade geothermal that we get from the close to the surface, shallow surface anyway, that for heating and cooling our homes. So currently there is no electricity being generated in Canada from geothermal, well, commercially, although it is being tested out in British Columbia right now. We're at the Mount Mega Massive over by Pemberton. There's a 100 megawatt facility there that, well, potential facility being developed. So this is still ongoing. It's been going for years, but it seems to take a long time to get through it. I just wanted to mention that I did read a study just a little while ago that the Canadian Geothermal Energy Association has on their website. And it was quite interesting. It talked about Alberta and all the abandoned oil and gas wells. And there's some 60,000 of them. And they wanted to know how they could be possibly put to work. And they did a study and found that I believe 690 out of them had potential for geothermal because the downhole temperature was hot enough to either produce the electricity generating geothermal, or to do the direct use geothermal, which is a lower grade or lower temperature that can just be brought to, say, for example, 60-degree hot water, Celsius that is, and used in, say, agribusiness or greenhouses. Anyway, getting back to GeoExchange, which is what we do here in Canmore. GeoExchange heating and cooling systems rely on the use of a heat pump and the movement of fluid or refrigerant to absorb or reject heat to either the ground, water, or air. If it's a GeoExchange heat pump, then we have a ground system attached, and we have different options there. We have open loop, which is the most common in Canmore. You have great water here, so it's very easy to just drill a shallow well, or two wells actually, a supply well, drop a submersible pump down, pump water through the heat pump, and reject it right back out into an injection well that takes the water right back to the original aquifer. It's very effective, very efficient. Another source is the like a pond or a lake or a river or a fast-flowing creek, we can utilize that to do a pump and dump system with water through. That works well. If you don't have the water available to you, like you do here, then, and you're up high, say on the mountainside or in our valley in the Columbia, you basically have to go with one of the closed loop systems, and that's where, you know, if you're in town, you'll have to drill multiple boreholes, or if you're on an acreage, you can do a horizontal arrangement. It's just shallow, it's excavated, or you can do sort of a hybrid of them both, which is an augered system, and they all work equally well in the end, just slightly different cost. Geo-exchange systems simply transfer heat to or from a location exploiting the refrigeration process. It's the very same process as your refrigerator at home utilizes. Of course, the process is reversed with the seasons, whether it's heat or winter. Winter or summer. I'm not going to get into the lower thermodynamics or anything. We just don't have time. Also, it's a little bit kind of dry. I do want to talk a little bit about the heat pump, though. It's the heart of our system, and it's essential, and it performs its magic. So basically, you have refrigerant circulating through the center of the heat pump. You have a compressor with two heat exchangers, one on each side. Refrigerant is circulated through these, and on the one side, the source side, you say we've got groundwater coming in. That groundwater, well-warm refrigerant. Now, refrigerant is pretty cool stuff, so it will vaporize at very low temperatures. So when the groundwater, which is actually, you'd think it's cool, but it's actually quite warm in the science of things, it comes in and it will cause the refrigerant to flash or vaporize. Now, a changing state from a liquid to a gas, that gives off a good amount of heat, and that's collected and it goes on as a high temperature gas up to the compressor. The compressor compresses, and that enhances the heat again, so that we double up on the heat. And at that point, we've got a high pressure, high temperature gas that we condense on the load side, which is the distribution system for the house, and we pull off the heat and to either your infloor or your forced air unit, and the circuit continues. A heat pump can move 3.5 to 4 times more heat to or from a building than the energy required to operate it. So this is where our conservation comes in. Basically, in terms that you might understand a little easier, it's like for every $1 of input into the electricity to operate the system, you're going to get $4 worth of heat back out of it. So it's an efficiency thing. And you've probably heard the term tons when mentioned with heat pumps. Well, 1 ton is 12,000 BTUs. And so you'll have 3-ton, 4-ton, 5-ton heat pumps, etc. And so, for example, a 4-ton heat pump, well, that's 48,000 BTUs, which is probably an average size home. And just, yeah, the different, on the load side of the heat pump, you can feed different systems. So we can feed in-floor heating or radiators, or we can stick with the traditional forced air, and you can pull your gas furnace out and slide the heat pump in, and it just takes right over feeding the forced air ductwork. I just wanted to mention the Bow Valley Aquifer. This is really a game changer for Canmore. It's just a huge resource that you have here. It is absolutely enormous, and there's nothing like it anywhere that we know of in this province or BC. It's unprecedented, the amount of water that it has. It's like 320 million cubic meters of perfect water, and it runs from the park gates all the way down out here just on the other side of Canmore, all the way down to Dead Man's Flats, and it's a full width of the valley, and it gets down to about 350 feet deep. So it's just a huge body of water, and it's basically responsible for super economical geothermal. That is using 43-degree water, and and it's just, I say, a mind-blowing resource. It has basically been, well, not exploited, but used by Spring Creek. They brought it to everybody's attention with Frank Koenig down there and the management team. They've done a heck of a job with the geo, and they've really put it on the map. And if it wasn't for Spring Creek and the perseverance and Frank's vision down there, I certainly wouldn't be here today. And there's just so much potential for the whole of Canmore. Like, because geo doesn't degrade the water at all. 100% of the water that comes out goes right back in, just a few degrees cooler or a few degrees warmer depending on the season. So it's totally non-degrading, and there's no contamination or anything like that at all. So this slide is just of one of the mechanical rooms of a 50-unit apartment building down there. It's a 90-ton system, so it's 3 30-ton heat pumps, and you can see the heat exchanger and the pipework in the background. If you don't have access to the aquifer here, you're up on the hillside, you're going to be faced with having to drill on a closed-loop system. So basically, it'll be drilling multiple boreholes. The average home would probably need 4 or 5 200-foot boreholes. So you, even though it'll work great, it's going to be an additional cost to drill those extra boreholes. Here's an example on the other side of the valley of a closed-loop system. That's Silvertip Golf Course. They've got a great setup there with a horizontal closed-loop system under one of the fairways out the back of the clubhouse. And they've got 3 10-ton heat pumps for a 30-ton system, heating all the building and cooling it. I should just touch on air source heat pumps because they're actually going to be the future. The technology is really moving along. It wasn't too many years ago where those heat pumps couldn't run much below -5, and then they'd have to shut down, and your backup system would take over. The new ones now, they can go down to -22 before they're shut down. So they're getting better, and probably another 10 or 15 years they might even put geothermal out of business because you won't need to do the ground loops. They're also got the advantage of having a small footprint, and they're ideal for retrofit situations. Here's an example one here. This is a Nordic unit, and they're very efficient, and they're a good product. They're actually the best company in Canada, but the only company in Canada actually producing heat pumps. The installation process starts with a site visit, and then we'll do a heat loss calculation along with a cooling load calculation on the house or the building, and from that we can size the heat pump and the ground loops required or the water volume needed, and we can design also the mechanical system that follows the heat pump with the distribution and everything for the home. And at that point we'll be able to determine the cost, and from there the payback period, and of course the timeline for the installation. Though the capital costs installing geo-exchange and air source heat pumps are reasonably more expensive than traditional forms of heating and cooling, there is method to the madness. With a correctly designed system, owners can see a 50 to 65% reduction in their heating and cooling bills, with a payback anywhere between 4 to 10 years, depending on the size of the system and the fuel that you're comparing to. Now, admittedly, in Alberta, we're fighting cheap natural gas as our competition, so your payback period will be closer to the 10 years, whereas in the Columbia Valley, we don't have natural gas, they only have propane, and that's a lot more expensive. So it's a 4-year payback period for the geothermal. So, in the blink of an eye, you've gone through your payback period, and after that, it's all savings and basically gravy. Geo-exchange and air source heat pump systems often require less maintenance and can add serious curb appeal and resale value to any residential or commercial building. They'll also last longer, like they have a life expectancy, just the heat pump has a life expectancy of 20 years, whereas say a gas furnace is only So you've got a longer lifespan. Also, geo-exchange systems use a renewable resource, the earth or water or air, which is efficient and non-polluting. There's no combustion, there are no emissions, it's safe. And here's a little quote, just to take a dig at my geothermal, or should I say my solar colleagues, from the National Research Council of Canada. There is unlikely to be larger mitigating effect on greenhouse gas emissions and the resulting global warming impact of buildings from any other current market available single technology than from heat pumps. So, as I say, we're a conservation technology, and it's all about reducing the cost of heating our homes or cooling homes, and at the same time staying green. Federal and provincial governments are beginning to recognise the important role that geothermal plays in reducing home and business energy usage, and have created rebate programs to facilitate the installation. Well, they're a bit wimpy right now. We used to have a good program with the Eco Energy grants. That was $7,500 was a nice little boost. But now there's not much out there. The BC has $2,500 available to geothermal conversion. And I'm not sure what Alberta, if anything. There is a federal grant in the form of the accelerated tax write-down for commercial operators, which is it's pretty good. But for residential, it's a little slim right now. We're hoping that that's going to change in the near future. But don't be holding your breath. Okay, just want to touch on district heating potential. For Canmore, that's great for the infill building with all the fourplexes and fiveplexes that are going in. A central heat pump can heat all of them, basically, very efficiently. Another example that we could do here would be to have say, a new neighbourhood, to have a small centralised building that's that size of say a double car garage that would house the geothermal system, and that would be enough to heat a small neighbourhood of 50 to 80 homes, and it would be very, very cost effective. Another example of an existing one is in Manitoba, where there's a small town over there that has a district energy heating system with geo-exchange, and they heat the fire hall and the arena and the community centre. The beauty of the arena is that they build the ice with it as well. They make ice with it, and a byproduct of making ice is heat, and that is basically moved over and it heats the building next door, or the bleachers in the arena itself. Local sustainability in action. Canmore seems to be ahead of the game. You're part of the natural step framework, so it's a bit like preaching to the choir here. I think I can probably pass on that. You're doing a great job, so keep it up. I'm just going to finish off with a quote. Do not wait for extraordinary circumstances to do good action. Try to use ordinary situations. And that's John Paul Richter. The reason I threw that in is I'm just thinking that we should start now, get the ball rolling with the likes of geo-exchange and other technologies, solar, because pretty soon, it might be 5 years, might be 10 years down the road, we're going to come to a point where CO2 producing emissions will be basically outlawed. So we're going to hit one of those, oh my God moments. And so, common sense tells us that basically we should be starting in on it now and just moving along, getting the ball rolling. So that's about it. So, any questions? Sure.
Let's just say South Canmore, where you've got that fantastic reservoir for heat sink resources.
Are you saying here locally here with the reservoir? Yeah, sure. It would be probably a $25,000 system. Now, arguably that it's going to be a fairly long payback against natural gas, but at some day you're going to get to the point where you won't be allowed to use natural gas. So what are you going to do? You know, you're going to have to do an electrical system. So we're geothermal or geoexchange is all about just saving money and cutting back on the kilowatts that we actually do use in a year for heating our homes.
What's the average cost of a air source heat pump for an average residential home?
$18,000 installed. And that also will provide domestic hot water heating as a sort of a byproduct when it's running. So it'll do about 65% of your domestic hot water requirements as well.
What type of electrical consumption will that system take?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
The reason I ask is I once had a heat pump system, up to $600 a month in electricity.
Yeah. It will depend on like my own system, and this is what got me into this business, is that I converted my home, and I was paying $8,000 a year in propane costs to heat my home. It's 4,000 square feet, so it's a pretty big house. And after the installation of geothermal, my utility bills dropped to $1,500 a month. So, you know, it definitely saves. But I can't tell you exactly how many kilowatts you use in a year.
And how big of space do you need to install an open loop system for a residential or a duplex?
You can be quite close to a building, about 10 feet from the building for each well, and the wells should be no closer than 80 feet to each other. So you have two wells, just regular 6-inch water wells.
No closer than 8 feet?
80 feet apart.
80.
So one on the back of the lot, one on the front of the lot, and no closer than 10 feet from your neighbour's property line, or your property line, should I say. And we want to stay about 6 feet or 8 feet away from the house.
How deep do you go usually?
How deep?
How deep do you have to go?
Well, here we've got wells down at Spring Creek that are actually excavated wells, and only about 15 feet deep because the water table is really high. But I would say probably 40 feet if you're going to drill.
Is there any regulatory hurdles around
Not too bad. You have to apply for a permit. And it's from the Alberta Ministry of Environment. So it's basically a permit to use water, but not to consume. So it's not that difficult as a regular water license. But definitely, you know, you've got to get permission. Not sure the town requires it.
You overheat the groundwater? If every half the communities are using new groundwater?
Right. The biggest problem is you're pulling the temperature of the water down. If there's
But doesn't that cool it?
Yeah, exactly. But remember, in the summer, you're actually putting heat back in the ground because you're pulling out heat out of the house and depositing it in the ground because everything's reversed. And say in the winter, you're putting back colder water in the ground, but it's only a few degrees. And if you're not all building on top of each other doing that, there's no reason why, especially with this reservoir here. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, John. So up next, we have Huang from Enmax, who's going to talk to you about the solar rental opportunities that they offer.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Huang, like Jodi just introduced me. I'm the manager for residential and small commercial in Managh Solar Group. Before I go into the presentation, I'm really excited about tonight's event. Definitely, especially listen to the town of Canmore's initiative and things like that, and some of the industry friends like Jeff and Val talk about that. And then, of course, there's no competition when it comes down to renewable energy with John's presentation, of course. So a quick introduction about Enmax. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. So we are a local utility in Calgary. We do generation as well as in Calgary we own the wire in the city. And when it comes to retail, we actually do sell electricity around the province. The other thing is, probably not that many people would know that we actually one of the green energy or renewable energy providers in the province. Started with some big wind farm, and recently, we definitely, not really recently anymore, we do start doing solar as well, which is about a decade ago. So I just want to point out that many people, when they talk about solar energy, they think Alberta is probably not the best place to have solar. Or quite often it's probably associated with the temperature and of course the snow coverage as well. But in reality, our solar resources in Alberta is way bigger than a lot of other regions in the world, such as like Germany, for example. Right now, I was told that, or I should say some research said that now Germany is 20% of the energy or electricity actually coming from solar PV. But they are way down in the chart there somewhere. Like Japan also, definitely Alberta, in Calgary particularly. I believe Calgary is the second most sun in the whole Canada, for that matter. If you can see the chart there, the red really means that we have a lot of solar resources. As Jeff and Val already explained it, like that's how it works under the microgen regulation. The saving, the economic part is really it comes from the grid electricity displacement. You basically, once you have a solar PV system on your roof, you will consume less because the solar PV will supplement your consumption there. The other one is definitely microgen credit, but as they also mentioned that the value of those electricity takes on a different values. One is with the TNDs, and the other one is just the energy credit. Unfortunately, that's the government rule. We just have to follow it. If it's actually net billing, I think it would be better. Means that really the two values should be equal, and then I think Alberta Solar would be probably better today. Just go into a little bit background. We started the solar program back in 2007, and we've been doing it quite a bit. I'm not going to bore you with the details. This year, we actually probably own 40 to 60% of the Alberta grid-tied solar. We have about 1,000 sites right now around the province. The reason it's such a large range is still solar PV in Alberta right now, still kind of in the beginning. It's still in an emerging situation. So every time you turn on the relative big system, that number would be going down. And then when we turn on the bigger system, we do that. A couple of records that we actually own is definitely some of the rooftop system on some of the recreational center, for example. The town of Raymond, when Lori was talking about, we actually built all those systems. Taylor's Park, we actually was part of the Taylor's Park's initiative too. So some of the bigger rooftop systems, we are pretty proud of it. So some of why, this is what we can do. We often offer a turnkey solution. When it comes to this program design, 10 years ago or 13 years ago now, we quite often heard the people would say, oh gosh, we really want to do solar, except I don't have the upfront cost. It's so capital intensive. And the other thing is, solar PV is still new to Alberta, even though we've been doing this for the last 13 years. So the next comment would usually be is, can it last that long? So when we designed this whole solar PV program, we decided to actually offer a lease program. The true benefit is really try to address this concern. Is first of all, we can lease up to from 25% or 75% options. The other thing is long-term warranty. During this period, during the term, usually it's typical for residential 15 years, we will warrant the system for the period of time. Not only on the parts, because parts usually coming from the manufacturers, they usually give you that replacement unit, but quite often it's the labor components. In Alberta, labor is really expensive, and we will actually cover the labor as well in that case. So for the 15 years, we usually do that. And the other thing is, because it's lease, probably many people actually have the bad taste in the mouth when it comes to car leasing and things like that. During the term, if you actually decide, you know what, I don't like the warranty, I think the warranty is fine, the system is working fine, I don't need the lease anymore, you can break it anytime you want. We will just charge you the remaining of the principal. We are not going to charge you the future interest like car lease. So it's really flexible. We really want to just help people to start their own initiative. Upfront payment, like we have different choices, 25%, 50%, or 75%. The APR, of course, if you borrow a little bit more money, 4.5% is the worst number. But really, if you go to any bank, by the way, this interest rate, the APR, we are going to fix for 15 years. Not like your mortgage, it fluctuates from time to time. This is 15 years. We are not going to change it at all whatsoever. At the end of the year, you just pay a small 5% lease annual term payment, and you basically buy the system if you decide to. If you don't, we can come out to remove it at a nominal rate, and that's it. And that's how we want to help to start this whole solar initiative. So I just do a quick case study for you. A typical system, by the way, Jeff and Val, the number is almost identical. I look at the number, I go, wow, that's good. But the 5 kilowatt,
We did the same thing, man.
I know. We did not cheat, at least we did not cheat on this one, for sure. We did not cheat, we at least compare notes right now, right? So basically, it's about, for 5 kilowatt system, we are at about $13,000, 50% down, for example. Then you are paying $6,700, and you amortize the rest of the 50%. The lease payment come out to be $42 or $500 roughly. The interest rate for 50%, as I just told you that, is about 2.5%. Now, these days, you literally can put it in the bank for the $6,000 that you don't have to pay us. You probably get the same GIC numbers. But in return, you will get a 15 years warranty, right? So the end of the term payment is 5%, like I said, it's worked out to be $600, $700 roughly. The other beauty part of it, once you actually pay for $6,000 or $7,000, your first year saving is about just probably break even or a little bit ahead. So you literally, your cash flow, you don't have to, like you start saving right out the gate. And the payback period is, of course, because the 15 years, you still have to pay till then, and then add a little bit for make it up the $7,000 of the upfront payment. So you're looking at 18 years of payback right now. So that's all I got so far. Any questions? Sure.
So there was several talks tonight about you can't sell your excess energy back to the grid, right? And so if you put in solar or otherwise, you're only allowed to sell so much back.
Yeah. So under the Alberta regulation, microgrid regulation, they look at your last 12 months of consumption. That's what usually they base on. So once you say your house would consume 7,000 kilowatt hour a year, that probably equivalent of a 7 kilowatt solar system. So they do allow you to sell back during the summer month because you usually have a longer summer.
I'm curious where it comes with the regulation of why they cap it so you can't, if you produce excess, why, I mean, the whole idea is to reserve energy and save energy, and then they cap it. So if you have a system and you become very energy efficient in your home or business, there's two ways to do energy efficiency, with solar or otherwise, and then reduce the amount of energy, and then so if you have a system that's too big, they're saying, well, you still can't sell it back or put it back
So,
in the grid.
just, I'll just speak to that because I own a system. There's no cap in terms of what you can sell back, except for when you're actually constructing the system. So once you got the system in place, if you become much more efficient, you get every cent of that energy that you send back to the grid. Obviously, the transmission charges you have to pay for when it comes back to your system, but you get that full value of that electricity that goes out to the grid, no matter how much you send out.
So it's restrictive on what you can build. So
That's
you're
right.
not building an excess big system.
That's right. It's based on your previous 12 months of usage.
Yeah. So there's no utility police to come around to take off panels from the house. So, but I think it also has something to do with the safety of the grid. Or they don't want to put too much on the grid, and then right. Yeah. Sure.
Does your leasing cost include all parts, inverter, labor,
Yeah.
racking?
The
everything?
whole system for 15 years. Yeah.
And you take the risk on whether it comes in twice the cost, or like how does that work?
Sorry, say that again.
If there's a cost overrun on the install, is that something that Enmax does?
The call.
Who's responsible for installing the hardware?
Oh, we are. So we are no different. We are just a solar installers. Yeah, everything is all included. It's not like we are just a solar installer, except we work with local partners everywhere because it's such a large province and we're based in Calgary. So we tend to work with local partners. As a matter of fact, Greenlight Energy, Greenlight Power today is one of our partners in the area. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Meg. I apologize to everyone, we're running a little late tonight. We're a little late starting, but we're on to our final presenter, and I promise you this one's going to be pretty short. So please welcome Riley Tobin and his colleague from Bow Valley Power.
Don't worry, we'll be short and sweet. But I'm Cody Belsher. This is my business partner, Riley Tobin. We're the owners of Bow Valley Power. Bow Valley Power is an energy retail company, and we've been serving Alberta-wide since 2010. We have electricity and natural gas rates available, as well as we are proud to say we are the first boutique retailer in the province to offer green power offsets. And we have quite a few people in the Canmore area that support that program, so we want to say thanks to that. But yeah, tonight we're here to talk about our solar club, which is for micro generators with a two-way meter. Two-way meter.
Bidirectional, yeah.
Bidirectional. And like it was mentioned before by Val, that the rate that you generate your energy, or whatever rate you pay for your energy, is the rate you'll get paid for any of your exports.
Yeah, so what we've done in partnership with Green Alberta Energy, started last year in March, is we came up with something called the Solar Club. What the Solar Club is for microgenerators. There's two rates. There's a low rate for when you're importing more than you're exporting, so you're paying 7 cents a kilowatt hour is the low rate, and then there's the high rate at 21 cents. So that rate is for obviously when you're exporting more than you're importing in those summer months or those hot spots. So it helps with the payback. We allow our customers to toggle back in between the low rate and the high rate every 10 days, and we leave it in the customer's hands because originally we did it for them, but you guys know your solar installations a lot better than we do, so we let you guys kind of pick when to switch back and forth. Along with the 21 cent export rate is we're going to pay you 2.5% cash back on all electricity imported, as well as we're going to offset 30% of the electricity that you import with renewable energy covered by Green Alberta Energy and us. So the only stipulations to get on the club: one, you need solar panels. That's a big one, right? Obviously, bidirectional meter. So you have to be classified as a small site. Can't be large, and we ask that you make a donation to your local food bank as well.
So like we said, short and sweet. But to reiterate, you get the rate, or you can sell at the rate that you pay at. Right, here we go. Thank you. Forgot we had that. You sell at the rate that you pay at. So if it's one of those months where you're generating more than you're using, you may as well be on our 21-cent rate and reducing your payback greatly compared to average pool prices.
Yeah.
So,
How does that toggling administratively work back and forth? Do you do it all online?
yeah, you can log into your My Account on our website. You go to bowvalleypower.net, sign into your account, and you just hit a rate change request. You select low, high, whichever one you want to switch to.
At a 10-day interval?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every 10 days. You
Yeah.
switch as soon as every 10 days if you want to.
Well, if people here already have solar systems, we talk about this all the time when I'm, working with new clients and whatnot. But do you guys offer support to help them determine whether or not this program is going to benefit them in those summer months? Are they sending enough electricity back to the grid like that?
Yeah,
Kind of thing,
well,
to make sure there's.
Yeah, well, if they're already current customers of ours and they're just a regular microgenerator not switching between these programs, we're able to look back at their history.
Yeah.
But you are able to reach into our customer care staff and provide your old bills and stuff, and they would look at it and be like, well, maybe this isn't the right program for you, because you don't want, if you're using more than you're exporting, you don't want to be paying 21 cents kilowatt hour when the pool price is at 5 cents.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having us, you guys. And if anyone wants to pull us aside and chat or grab a card, we'll be here for another little bit. So thank you very much.
Okay, so they mentioned short and sweet, but I think the key point to take away from that is that there are ways of making money from your solar system without just optimizing your electrical usage in your home. So I think we'd just like to move on to the final portion of our evening, unless anyone has any further questions for any of our speakers. But this is going to be an opportunity for you to go and talk to them one-on-one. We have a few people in the crowd who have solar systems as well, who are willing to talk to you about their systems and their experiences, and tell you one-on-one what it's really like to be what it's really like to be a owner of a solar system, and what are the pros and cons, and how awesome is it, etc., etc. So please go and chat to our presenters this evening and our solar ambassadors and get any of your final questions answered. And I think Jill would like to just say a few closing words.
Yeah, so anyone who has one of those brainstorming activities, if you could take a minute just to do the follow-up part of that now, and then find your person who will find you who did that with you, that would be great. And if you could leave your email, that would also be really fantastic on the back of it. You're willing to do a little bit of follow-up and more detail with me. So that would be wonderful. Thank you all for your time tonight with your research. It really does make a big difference to help make these learning events more meaningful and more impactful. So thanks very much for you guys putting this on and bringing us on to help do the evaluation for it.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, that's it from us. Thank you, everyone.